Hey, my name is Bhex. Welcome back to another episode of my horror survival Datapack devlog. And today I have made quite a few changes. For one, the bundle of sticks is now a stick bundle. It just sounds a little better. And as you can see, I am quite thirsty, and if I try to drink from this river, I will get sick. Now, I can really quickly fill up my thirst, but I will get very, very sick doing so. So you might be thinking, Bhex, how do you drink water without getting sick? Let me show you. The first thing you'll want to do is find a fallen tree. And when you find a fallen tree, you can punch it. But instead of getting bark, you will get a piece of scrap wood. Let's place down a campfire and let's get it started. Now we're gonna throw some stick bundles into this campfire and we will get a couple embers. Now you can craft an ember with a piece of scrap wood to make a bowl. And when you walk over to a water source and right click with a bowl, you will get a bowl of wild water. Now, I'm probably gonna change this to raw water just because people in my Discord server have pointed out that wild water sounds a little bit weird. Now, if you try to drink it, there is, once again, a good chance that you will get sick. But if you want to drink water without getting sick, you can shift and right click and it will place the water on a campfire. And after about 30 seconds, the water will boil and you will get some safe drinking water. And so once we get this bowl of clean water, we can drink it and safely rehydrate. Oh yeah, and I made a system that makes your thirst bar decrease faster the more you run and jump around. So campfires are nice, but did you know that you can combine a stick and an ember to craft a torch? And you can place down this torch. Now, it will burn out after a certain amount of time, but I want to show you something in particular that's really, really cool. So I'm going to run a command here, and you can see the torch dimmed out. It looks like the light level looks like 0. Now, my shaders make it look like there's no light coming from this, but believe me, this is emitting a light level. And once it stops raining, then the torch will brighten back up. So I think that's a pretty cool mechanic. Now, I did modify the World Gen Datapack from the last episode of this devlog because the oceans just looked extremely barren, and now they are actually oceans with life. You can also encounter other biomes. You're not just in one kind of forest. You can find taigas and birch forests and jungles. So now there is a bit of variety to your world and where you can spawn. Wolves, a 24/7 threat. Oh, it's a whole pack of wolves. Okay, this could do me in. This could be the end of this playthrough. So there are active threats during the daytime, being wolves and wasps, and there are even threats during the nighttime, being the Enderman. However, there is one time that is slightly safer than any other time, and that is when it's raining. You see, when it's raining, wasps can't come out to attack you, and Endermen can't spawn, leaving wolves as the only thing that can attack you. And if you're in an area where wolves don't spawn, then there are no active threats, making the player feel way too safe. So I am going to add a new type of monster that will spawn in the rain, and I think that it is a pretty nifty little idea. So let's get started. Alright, so I went and I coded the thing. I tried to code it on camera, but then a thing happened and the footage got corrupted, so I'm sorry. But as you can see, it's daytime, nothing's happening. We're safe until we come across like some wolves or some bees, but if it starts raining, the bees go away. So we need something to be a danger to the player in place of bees. So what I have added are little patches of silverfish that will pop up. Now, I have renamed these to rain mites, and when you just find one of them on their own, they're not a big deal, but if you get chased by a swarm, then it gets pretty tough. Now, I've actually added code that makes sure that the rain mites never spawn where the player can potentially see them. So a group of rain mites is never going to just appear right in front of you. However, they can appear right behind you. And there is a minimum distance from the nearest silverfish that any patch of rain mites can spawn from. So if you're fighting a pack of rain mites, you don't have to worry about another pack spawning right behind you and ambushing you. And as with most enemies, they despawn once they get out of a certain range of the player. And when it stops raining, rain mites will disappear when you're not looking at them. And if you need to get away from the rain mites in the rain, then there are a couple things you could do. One is to hide up in a tree. Another one is to go into a cave. Rain mites do not spawn in caves, and so being in a cave will ensure that you are safe. Or if you find a pale garden, you can go in here and rest assured that you will be safe from any ender mites, because they will start taking damage once they are in the biome, and they will not spawn here. Now, while pale gardens might be a safe haven during the rain, they are kind of the opposite during the night, because regardless of how close you are to a campfire, a creaking will always spawn behind you at midnight. And the cool part is I didn't have to change anything about the creaking. It is already the perfect candidate for a mob in this data pack. Now, there is a way to escape this guy, and that is just to keep your eyes on him and get far enough away. Once you are far enough away, it will despawn, and you will be able to stop worrying. So, what's the end goal of the big scary data pack? What is the player trying to achieve? That's a question I have been trying to figure out for a while. Now, there's the possibility of the end goal being to create a bed and successfully skip a night. But in order to do that, we would need to make wool a very rare drop from sheep. Plus, I intend to add mechanics which push players into caves. So I want to be able to beat the game from within a cave. So that leaves skipping the night out of the question. Maybe the player will have to find a structure which has a boss in it, and then they'll have to defeat that boss in order to beat the game. You know, kind of like the Ender Dragon, but it actually concludes the game. I do think it's a possibility. Alright, so it's been a while, and I've added a feature that I think you are going to like. Villages generate now. Now, they are ghost towns. Villagers cannot spawn in them. However, they are here. They do have a couple nice purposes. For one, shelter. There are actually doors that you can go inside and hide in and be safe. Coding the ability to open and close the doors was a major pain. They also have infinite campfires and torches. Now, these do have the drawback of not stopping Endermen from spawning. However, in exchange for infinite light, as well as infinite cooking food and boiling water, I figure that's an okay trade-off. I feel like these lava pools could be a source of some neat materials, but I'm not really sure what. I'm thinking if you find some exposed dirt like this that's near lava, you could be able to look through it and possibly get some resources. I also want to add more incentives to go into caves, like more resources. In the earliest versions of Big Scary Data Pack, you could hit a piece of flint against coal ore, and it would give you some coal, but it would destroy the piece of flint in the process. And I'm thinking that could be neat and handy, because if a player has incentive to go down into a cave, then they have the chance of getting lost or stuck down there. And that is one of my goals, is to push the player underground. Because once you have some threats down here, this will be much scarier than the forest. So what should be able to spawn here? Endermen don't spawn when you're underground because you have no way of telling when midnight is, so that might not be fair, but on the other hand, it might make for a good scare. But the Enderman's lazy. That's already in the data pack. Why don't I add something new? There are the obvious options of the 3 classic Minecraft mobs here. I think spiders would be the most fitting. Zombies might be a stretch, but skeletons I think could be really cool, especially if they're not the skeletons that have bows and are instead just, trying to punch the player. Now, once you're in a cave, the game does have to be challenging, but also beatable. And it needs to be beatable relatively quickly, because once you're underground, you cannot get more sticks, more bark, more wood to make bowls of water. So any water you find is going to have a high chance of poisoning you. And that's if you can find water in your cave system. Oh yeah, there are lush caves still. I've been thinking these could be a neat point for the player. I mean, shoot, these are easy food right here. I know what can spawn here. The bogged. The bogged can spawn here. I think that would be majorly awesome. So then on that note, I guess it's time to start coding the underground mobs. So I've made a few changes. One, you can now gather glowberries. That's a thing you can do. Another one is that while you are in the lush caves, occasionally a bogged will spawn right behind you. Now this can happen at any random time, any time of day. Up there it goes. The bogged doesn't have a bow, so it's all hand-to-hand combat. They do still drop bones and arrows. I do need to turn that off. So with that being said, there's now another biome that could possibly get an enemy. Dripstone caves. Now the big question is, what would spawn in a dripstone cave? I'm thinking a husk. A husk would be pretty neat, I think. But it can't be the husk, because when the husk hits you, it does hunger damage. And that's kind of like lame, because it spawns behind the player. And so a lot of the time, the way you're noticing it is going to be that it hits you. And that's just an unfair way to randomly lose hunger. Hunger damage sucks because you're underground. You can't really get more food unless you find a lush cave. You can get more food from a lush cave. If you can get food from lush caves while you're in the caves, then does the hunger damage here really matter? I suppose not. Yeah, let's add the husk. So with the reload of my data pack, the husk should be added to Dripstone caves. So if I just hang around here for a little bit. Oh, there it is. Oh, it's invisible? Is that my shader? Why is the husk invisible? Is it something I did in my resource? Oh, what? What did I do? Okay, I fixed it. Husks are no longer invisible. I forgot that they were. I forgot why they were, but they were. But now they're not. For the sake of, I'll say, education, I guess, I will go through the code of how the spawning works in the lush caves, because it's pretty simple, but I think pretty nifty. In the main function of the big scary data pack, we are constantly keeping the current time in a scoreboard called time, and every tick a random number gets rolled between 0 and 50 ticks before midnight. That value is saved to a scoreboard and then copied to another scoreboard, and then 50 is added to that secondary scoreboard. So we have the random number from this, and then we have another number that is 50 more than that number, and those are being held in 2 different scoreboards, random time and random time max, respectively. Next, if the current time matches random time range and the player is in a lush cave, summon a bogged, and this does exactly that, just in a slightly different order. So execute if the biome that the player is in is a lush caves, and the current time is greater than the random time and also less than the random time max, and the player is underground, then one block behind the player at the same Y level that they're standing at, if the block being referenced can be ignored by raycasting, which is most plants and air blocks, and the block above that can be ignored by raycasting, then summon a bob. And we have a very similar thing. If the biome is a dripstone cave and the time matches the criteria and the player is underground, then behind the player at the same Y level they're at, if the blocks can be cast through, then summon a husk. And so all of that is added into the player tick function, which the player runs every single tick. So with that being the way that mobs spawn, you can see how there could be gaps between not a lot spawning and quite a few spawning back to back. However, if you manage to stay out of cave biomes like Dripstone and Lush caves, then there's not much of a threat to be had. So let's add a threat. Now, I really want to add spiders, and how I want spiders to spawn is I want them to spawn obviously behind the player. By the way, the reason everything spawns behind the player is because the player shouldn't be able to see anything spawn. But I want to have it start on walls and ceilings. If I'm the player here and I'm looking this way, I don't want the spider to spawn here. I want the spider to spawn here. Now, it would be nice if perhaps the mobs didn't spawn behind you when you were near a campfire or other light source. That would be pretty nifty, I think. Yeah, that would be cool. Oh, hey, look, diamonds. This data pack is suspiciously easy to work in. So I've added spiders spawning to the data pack. It has the same spawning pattern as the other mobs, but it is slowed down by 3 times. Spiders will always spawn behind you. They will try to spawn on walls, but that doesn't always happen. And luckily, they can spawn very far away from you. So you are not necessarily always in danger if you're in a big cave like this one. All right, now you can eat glowberries. Yes, I'm only just now adding that. I didn't have that before. So yeah, I now think the caves are plenty dangerous. Now they just need to be lucrative. All right, guys, I'm gonna keep it $1.50 with you. I am at a creative loss right now. I have no idea where to go next with this data pack, what to add, how to make the caves more lucrative. So I'm calling on you. If you have any ideas for the late game of this data pack or the cave section of the data pack, then please leave a comment. Or if you'd like, you can join my Discord server, which will be in a comment somewhere in the comments section. YouTube took away my ability to have links in the description. But with that all being said, my name is Bhex. Thanks for watching, and as always, thanks for watching. All right, bye.